In this video, let me show you two practical interactive design tips that will elevate your digital publishing projects in Adobe InDesign. Follow along in this step-by-step class and learn how to apply button actions to send email, as well as create an interactive timeline with controlled animation. Let's jump right into this video and start creating. The first interactive design tip that I'd like to show you is how to create an interactive button to send an email. Let's get a closer look. I have 4 profile images on this page here, and within each group, there's an icon of an envelope to represent email, as well as a message that says email Jessica, email Anthony, email Marcus, and email Kara. So we're going to start on the left and work our way to the right. We're going to need the buttons and forms panel for this. So go ahead and click the first profile image, and I'm going to open my buttons and forms panel here, which I already have on the dock, and I'm just going to tear it off. By the way, if you don't have buttons and forms, just go up to Window, Interactive, and Buttons and Forms. So within the buttons and forms panel, with the first profile picture selected, let's go ahead and convert that object, that grouped object, into a button. So go ahead and convert that, and always rename your buttons. And in this case, let's just call this Trigger 1. Next, let's add our action. So go ahead and click the action plus icon here. And for this, we want to go to URL. Now we're not going to send this to a URL specifically. We're going to trigger an email address. So in the URL field here, let's go ahead and select that and just backspace or delete. And for this, let's type in mail to : and then your email address. So I'm going to type in a fictional address here to represent Jessica Thorne. So jessica.thorne@purplebox.com. Just hit enter. And next, I'd like to add a rollover effect, so that when a user or viewer rolls over Jessica's image, it'll change color and we'll only see the icon and her name when a viewer rolls over it. So let's click on rollover, and then let's double click to drive into the rollover appearance state. Now the fill color of this circle is the same purple you see in the back. I'm going to double click that so I can select the content within that frame, and I'm going to make my way to the properties panel, and in the opacity, I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to multiply. And I'm also going to change the opacity from 100% to 50%. So now if I toggle between normal and rollover, you could see the difference between the two. When someone rolls over it, it goes from its normal appearance, the normal color of the image, to this purple overlay. Now I only want the icon to appear on rollover. So let's click back on normal, and then let's just delete the icon in this instance, and also delete email Jessica in this instance as well. So now if I click this, we can go to rollover and then normal, rollover, and we have that appearance that we only see that icon when a viewer rolls over it. We can go ahead and test it out just to make sure it's working. Click the EPUB preview window, and then we could toggle over it. And also, if we click this, you'll see that your email client will launch with the email that you placed in the buttons and forms panel. Now that we have the first profile button set up, let's focus our attention on the remaining 3 grouped images. I'm just going to shift over the buttons and forms panel, and I'm going to click on the second. Let's convert that to a button, and let's call this profile 2. And the action here, again, is go to URL. And we're going to replace the HTTP : with mail to, that's all one word, : and then your email. So let's do anthony.dell@purplebox.com. Again, we're going to set up the same rollover appearance effect to this. So let's click on rollover. Then you'll have to double click to drive into the rollover state, the rollover appearance state. Once you've done that, let's go ahead and double click again until you have the content within that frame selected. Go to your opacity and change the blend mode from normal to multiply, and change the opacity from 100% to 50%. Now let's go back and click on normal, and then double click until you have that icon selected and delete it in that instance. And do the same for the text frame, email Anthony. Let's go ahead and delete that as well. So you can test it out by clicking that profile image, which is now a button. And if you toggle between rollover and normal, you could see now that we have our rollover appearance effect set up. Go ahead and click on the third profile image. This is Marcus Jones. Convert that to a button. And again, let's name this profile 3. The action here is go to URL. Change the URL to mail to : and then marcus.jones@purplebox.com. Click on rollover, double click to drive into the rollover, double click again to select the content within that frame, go to opacity and change the blend mode to multiply and the opacity from 100% to 50%. Click on normal, then double click to delete the icon, double click to delete the text frame. Now if we click that again, we could test it out, rollover, normal. We have one more here, so click on the last, and we're going to convert that to a button, and let's rename this profile 4. Let's go to actions and set that to go to URL, and we're going to change the URL to mail to : kara.campbell@purplebox.com. Click on rollover, double click to drive into the rollover appearance, double click again to select the content within the frame, go to opacity, and in the blend mode, we want multiply. Change the opacity from 100% to 50%. Click on normal, double click until you have that icon selected and delete. Double click that text frame and delete that as well. And just to make sure that that is set up properly, we can toggle between the two and see that it is. Now, just to be sure that these are all working as intended, of course, we can go ahead and test this out in the EPUB preview window. We can see that all our rollovers are working, and we can click on them and it will launch once again our email client. Before we jump into the interactive timeline with animation, let's take a closer look at how I've set up the layers panel. I have all the content I need on separate layers. Let me show you. So here is timeline triggers, which is basically the line in the timeline as well as the circles. See that there? Those are the buttons that will create to trigger everything in the animated timeline. Underneath that, we have markers. Those are the lines that will animate when we click on the timeline triggers. And underneath that, we have info boxes. This contains the info in the timeline as well as the close icons, which we'll use to close and reverse each animation. So I always recommend, if you're doing something like this, an interactive timeline with animation, to place everything on separate layers. This will only help you keep things more organized. Let's go ahead and start animating the markers. So I'm going to click on this first one, and we'll need the animation panel for this, which I have here docked, and I'm going to tear off and place right in the center of the page. Now again, if you need the animation panel, just go up to Window, Interactive, and then Animation. I'm also going to zoom in here, so I'm going to hold Option, that would be Alt on Windows, and scroll inwards with your mouse, and then just position the page close to the animation panel. Now you can see I already have this selected, and I already have it named Marker 1. Let's apply a preset here of Grow. Now this says on page load, and that's fine, we'll change that later. The duration, let's set that to 0.25. And let's change the speed to ease in and out. So we have a nice ease in and out and a nice pace to our animation. Under the animate dropdown here, let's change it from current appearance to current appearance. In the origin points here, by default, it will be set to the center origin point. Let's change ours to the top center. I also want to make sure that this link is unlinked, which I already have. So if it's linked like that, just break the link, because we're going to set different dimensions or different values to our scale width and height. So the width will be 100%. and the height will be 0. You also want to ensure that the opacity is set to none, which you can see mine is. Now, if I go ahead and test this, you'll see that it'll just come in on page load, and that's exactly what we want. I'm going to close that, and I want to save this preset so I can apply it to the others. To do that, click on the animation options icon up here in the top right hand corner, and let's click save. Now I have a few already saved, so I'm going to call mine line expand 2. You could just call yours marker expand or line expand, whatever you like. And then I'm going to click OK. Now you can see when I set that, or when I saved that preset, it defaulted back to from current appearance. Let's just change that to current appearance. Everything else is fine. Now I'm going to press Command and 0 to go back to fit in view. And I'm going to reset my workspace so we could set the same animation to the other markers. I'm going to select them from left to right because they're going to animate in the order that you select them. So go from left to right, open your animations panel again, and under the preset, you can see I have mine called line expand 2. So go ahead and click that. And just ensure that the animate is set from current appearance to current appearance. Now let's go ahead and test this out. If I press play on my EPUB, those all play out on page load. Perfect, so that is working so far. Next, let's add the fade in animation to the info boxes down below. I'm going to click on the first one, company launched, and again, I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see. In the animation panel, this one's called 2013 info, and I just want a simple fade in for this. Now to match the consistency of the other animations, these two will be 0.25 seconds. Everything else will remain the same here. So I can click on the second, I'm just going to pan over, hold my shift key, and move from left to right and select the others. And let's do the same. These will all be fade in with a 0.25 second duration. Now we can go ahead and test this out. If I press the EPUB preview window, you'll see that all the markers come in and then all the info boxes come in. So that's exactly what we're looking for here. Next, let's focus on creating the buttons to trigger the animations in the interactive timeline. I'm going to start by clicking the first trigger button in the timeline. And again, we'll need the buttons and forms panel for this. So I'm just going to tear it off and place it right about here is fine. In the type, again, let's convert that to a button. And we're going to be naming these triggers. So this is trigger 1. And the action here will be adding 2 for each trigger. They'll both be animation. So let's click animation. And you can see the first animation that's appearing is marker 1. If I click that, you can see that all the animations that we set in this document, in this project, are listed here. So we'll just have to keep note of that. And again, this is why renaming them is important. So we want marker 1, and let's add a second animation, action. And in this case, let's change the animation to 2013 info. Remember, that is the grouped info boxes there. Let's add another rollover appearance to this. So let's click rollover and then double click. I'm going to zoom in here, double click. And you can see in my control panel that the size of this frame or the actual object is 11 pixels. Let's change that. Again, make sure that this is also linked to constrain those. And then we want to change that to 15. So it enlarges when we hover over it. So we have our normal and then we have our rollover. Perfect. So that one's set up. Now that we're here, I can click on this second one here. I'm going to convert that to a button, and let's call this trigger 2. In the action, let's go to animation, and let's change this to marker 2. The option is to play here. We want it to play, so that is good. But let's add another action, animation, and in this case, let's change it to 2016 info. Click rollover, then double click the object to drive into that rollover appearance, and change the width and height to 15. So it enlarges and we have a normal and then rollover. Perfect. So I'm just going to keep panning over and I'll click on 2019 and let's convert that to a button. and this is trigger 3. The action here is animation. The first will be marker 3. Let's add another action of animation, and the animation will be 2019 info. Click rollover, then double click and change the height and width to 15 pixels. And now we have our normal and rollover. Let's keep going to the last one here. Click the last trigger, convert that object to a button, and let's call this trigger 4. Let's add an action of animation, and the marker here is marker 4 with an option to play. Let's add another action of animation, and the second animation is 2021 info. Option play. Click rollover, double click, change the dimensions to 15 pixels, and then click back on normal. And you can see that that is operating. Now we have one more. So let me just pan over to the 2023 trigger, convert that to a button, and this will be trigger 5. Action here is animation. Change that to marker 5. The option is to play. Let's add another action of animation and change this one to 2023 info. Click rollover, double click, and change that to 15 pixels for width and height. And you can see we have our normal and rollover appearance states set to our triggers. So I'm going to press Command 0 to go back to fit in view. Let's now focus our attention on setting up close triggers to reverse the animations we've set up to this point. You'll have to double click in each group to access it, but there it is. There's the first one. Let's convert that to a button, and let's call this close 1. In the actions, we're going to set that to animation. And yes, we do want marker 1. However, we don't want it to play. We want it to reverse. In other words, we want this to close the animation. I'm going to click on rollover again. Let me zoom in, double click, and in this case, let's just change the color. In the swatches, it's the dark color. Let's make it a light purple there. So we have our normal and then rollover. Perfect. However, we are also going to add a second animation to this. So let's go back to actions, animation, and let's change the animation here to 2013 info and change the option to reverse. So we have both our actions applied as well as the rollover. Let's move on to the second close button here. I'm going to double click that to access it, go to type, convert that to a button, and let's call this close 2. In the actions, we want to set an animation action, and in the animation dropdown, let's change that to marker 2. Let's set the option here to reverse. Let's add a second animation action. In this case, it'll be 2016 info, and the option here is to reverse. Click rollover, double click, and let's make it light purple. And you can see that we have our rollover set on that one as well. Next, let's focus on 2019. So again, just double click to access the close button within the group. Let's convert that to a button, and let's call this close 3. Under actions, we want animation, and the marker is marker 3. Option is to reverse. It's easy to forget to set that to reverse. So oftentimes you'll think you have set up everything and you may have missed one of these reverses. It's still on play. So just double check that, okay? It's going to take some time for you to gather that and to understand it, but make sure that this is set to reverse in order to reverse that animation. Good. Let's click on actions again. Let's add another animation, and in this case, the animation is 2019 info. Let's change the the option from play to reverse. Click on rollover, double click, don't forget to double click, and let's choose light purple box. And you can see now we have our rollover. Good. So we're working our way through these. Double click on 2021, convert that to a button, and this is close 4, action, animation, marker 4, option, reverse. You can see once you've done these a few times, it becomes muscle memory. Action, animation, change this one to 2021 info, and the option is reverse. Click rollover, double click, change that to light purple box, click back on normal. We just have one more here to do, so let's double click that last one, convert that to a button, and let's call this close 5. The action here is animation, as we've been doing. The animation here is marker 5. We want to reverse that animation, go back to actions, add another animation action, and the last one here is 2023 info, and the option here is to reverse. Click rollover, double click, choose your lighter color, and then click back on normal. Now what I like to do is do Command 0 to go back to fit in view. I'm going to reset my workspace, and you can see that we've set up all the animations and all the button structures as well. Now there's one key element in order for this to work properly. If I click on this first marker and open my animation panel again, have a look under events. You'll see that I have 2 events set up here. One is on page load and one is on release. Now if I don't change this, all of these animations that we've set here will happen on page load even though we don't want them to. So let's click that and uncheck on page load. You can select all of them and do the same thing. Unselect or uncheck on page load. Do that for the grouped info boxes as well. Select all of them. You can see here on page load is appearing. Click that and uncheck on page load. The only thing we want here is on button event. So let's go ahead and test this out. If I press the EPUB preview window, that will launch everything, and have a look. Nothing's appearing down below, and that is exactly what we want. So if I hover over all of these, you can see that those are hovering. The hover appearance is working properly. And here's the moment of truth. So I'm going to click the first, the second, the third, fourth, and fifth. So those are all appearing. And let's see, we can close, 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 and close. Now you'll notice a little bit of a delay, right? They're not coming in at the same time. If you want them to, this is where timing comes into play. So let's have a look here. If I click this first trigger as an example and open your timing panel, you see here that trigger is controlling marker 1 and 2013 info. If I want those to come in at the same time, just click marker 1, hold shift, click 2013 info, and click this icon here to play together. You can see that those are now linked to play together. Now you will have to go in and adjust these individually, click each one and play together. So I'm going through the markers first. I'm going on each one, holding shift, clicking them together, and then playing them together. So click the trigger, click marker 5, hold shift, click 2023 info, play together. Same thing here. Click on the first close button. You'll have to double click to drive into it because those are grouped, remember. Click marker 1, hold shift, 2013 info, play together. Double click, click marker 2, hold shift, 2016 info, play together. Double click the third close icon, marker 3, hold shift, 2019 info, play together. You're getting the idea here, and how doing this over and over is just helping you remember the settings. So as a final step, I'm going to click on the EPUB preview window one last time to get a look, and I can hover over the profile images that we set email links to. But let's have a look at the interactive timeline with animation. I'm going to click through the triggers, and you can see that those are now playing together, and that looks a lot better. But I can also close or reverse the animation as we set it up using the animation panel and buttons and forms. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all my latest content. If you'd like to learn more interactive design tips and tricks using InDesign, then check out this playlist right up here. Until next time, take care and keep creating.